How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video. This is This Week in Hockey, where I cover everything that happened in the past week in the NHL, from records to the records during the week, to stats for different players, and just other important things that have happened around the league this week. So without further ado, let's get into how each division did this week. So starting with the West, the Anaheim Ducks went 1-1-1. So a relatively decent week from a team that I thought wasn't going to be very high up this year. So that's about what I have for them. Next up, the Arizona Coyotes are 1-2. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Golden Knights. They play again tonight, so we'll see if that goes to 1-4. Well, but yeah, against Vegas. Then Colorado went 2-1. So Colorado had a relatively good week, but they did lose to the Kings. So that's something that they might not want to do. Speaking of the Kings went 1-2. Their one win was against Colorado, and they lost to Colorado, and they lost to St. Louis last night. The Minnesota Wild went 2-1. They beat, I believe, the Sharks earlier this week. So yeah, I think the Minnesota is about where I have them. I think they're going to finish 4th in the division. I think in the West, I think it's going to be Colorado, St. Louis, Vegas, and I would say Minnesota, because I don't see the strength from Anaheim, Arizona, San Jose, or the Kings to make the playoffs right now. Now, the Kings could argue for it, but we'll see how it goes. Byfield is doing well, though, in the AHL. Speaking of California, the San Jose Sharks went 1-2 this week. They have not had the greatest week. And then it won't get better. I don't think it's going to get better for them. They are not really the strongest team right now. And I think that this is the first year, other than last year, where they're going to be trying to accumulate draft picks. And lastly, the Golden Knights. The Golden Knights beat the Coyotes 2 out of 3 times. About what I expected. They should win tonight. They should. Please. Anyway, so the standings for the Western Division. The Golden Knights stay where they were last week. Minnesota in 2nd. They stay where they were last week. Colorado moved up from last week into 3rd. St. Louis also moved up from last week into 4th. Arizona moved down into 5th. LA moved up into 6th. Anaheim moved up to 7th. And San Jose moved all the way down to 8th. So let's get into the North Division now. So the Calgary Flames only played 1 game this week, and they won it. So Calgary, they haven't played a lot yet, so there's not really a lot to judge on them. Edmonton went 1-2 this week. Montreal gave them a tough time, I believe, earlier this week. And yeah, speaking of Montreal went 3-0-1. Montreal is kicking the crap out of the Canucks. I know that the Canucks won a game in a shootout, but 7-3 and 6-3, I believe, was the other score, are not really where you want to be against the Canadiens. Then Ottawa went 0-2-1. I feel bad for Ottawa in this division because it's like 6 relatively decent teams, 1 or 2 really good ones, and then there's Ottawa, a rebuilder at the bottom. Stützle looked good, but yeah. Toronto went 2-1 this week. Vancouver went 1-3, and Winnipeg went 3-1. So those 3 teams have performed very well. Toronto and Winnipeg performed very well. The Canucks are not what I thought they were, at least so far. Their defense looks awful. Just awful. Toronto lost a heartbreaker to Edmonton, but then they came back and they beat them. And Winnipeg has just looked really good. They've won the games that they've played. And yeah. So the standings in the North, Montreal has moved up into 1st Winnipeg has moved up into second. Toronto has moved down to third. Calgary has moved down to fourth. Edmonton's moved up to fifth. Vancouver's moved up to sixth. And Ottawa has moved down to seventh in the division. So let's get into the Central. Carolina played one game this week because like 4 players got COVID, or went on COVID protocol at least, including Tara Vinen. You don't want to see that. But they won, so they're 1-0. Chicago went 1-1-1. They finally beat a team, and it was the Red Wings. Oh, Chicago. Anyway, the Blue Jackets went 2-0-2. Speaking of the Columbus Blue Jackets, we already covered Winnipeg, but a blockbuster of a trade this week between the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Winnipeg Jets. The Columbus Blue Jackets have acquired Patrik Laine and Jack Roslovic for Pierre-Luc Dubois and a 2022 third-round pick. Now, the reason it's a 2022 third and not a 2021 third is because 2022 draft picks are going to be worth more than 2021 draft picks, because since so many junior leagues aren't playing this year, the actual draft picks aren't going to be, they're not going to get that much playtime, and this draft is basically a crapshoot. So, you know, you could find the guy who would have gone first overall at 5th. So this draft is going to be very random. So that's why it's a 2022 third, because next year's draft is going to be a little bit more certain. But Columbus acquiring Patrik Laine and Jack Roslovic. Roslovic could develop into a second-line center, and Patrik Laine is a first-line winger, and probably one of the best goal scorers in the National Hockey League. Pierre-Luc Dubois, you know, I liked him, but then I've never been a fan of when players intentionally play their way out of town because they don't want to be there. And watching that shift of the last shift that he played as a Columbus Blue Jacket was pretty bad. Pretty bad. But Winnipeg's acquired their second-line center, and they got a third-round pick out of it too. So we'll see who wins this trade over the course of this season. Neither of those 2 players are in the top 10 forwards, though, so we'll see if either of them do get there. I think Laine could get there, but we'll see. But anyways, Columbus had a relatively good week. They went 2-2. Next up, Detroit. Detroit went 1-2. They beat Carolina. They lost to Carolina, and they lost to Chicago. They actually are playing Chicago right now as I record this, and Chicago's winning. So we'll see how it goes. Dallas had a very good first game. So Dallas got delayed because I believe they had 17 players go into COVID protocol. So they got delayed until now. So they played their first game 2 days ago, and they won. I don't know how you're the Nashville Predators and you let a team that hasn't even played yet beat you. You have played games, you've gotten up to speed in the National Hockey League, and not only did you lose, you lost 7-0. How do you lose 7-0 to a team that hasn't played yet? Oh, we'll get to Nashville. Anyway, Florida is 2-0-0, so Florida also hasn't played a lot of games this week, but that's not really their fault. Florida has been postponed. They had the first 2 games that were supposed to be against Dallas, which got postponed, and they had 2 games this week that were supposed to be against Carolina, but those games have been postponed. So it's not really Florida's fault, but they did go 2-0 this week, so a relatively decent week. Nashville went 0-2. You already know how I feel about them. And lastly, the Tampa Bay Lightning went 1-1. They just didn't play that many games this week. I feel that in a full week, 3 or 4 games, Tampa Bay could have taken some real wins. So let's get into the standings for the Central Division. So Tampa Bay is still in first place in the Central Division. Columbus has moved up to second. Florida has moved up to third. Carolina has moved down to fourth. Nashville has moved down to 5th. Detroit has moved down to 6th. Chicago's moved up to 7th with their 1 win. And Dallas is moved down to 8th. But that's not really a surprise because last week they hadn't played yet. So they were technically ahead of teams that had played but didn't win. So as Dallas acquires more wins, they'll get closer. Lastly, let's get into the East Division. Boston finally was scoring 5 on 5 goals this week, but they went 2-1. They beat Philly, so they had a relatively good week. Buffalo went 1-1-1, not as good of a week. I'm actually really rooting for Buffalo this year. I want to see that team have some kind of success. I feel really bad for Buffalo fans. They haven't made the playoffs in a decade. I don't know how you can still watch a team that has not made the playoffs in a decade, and it's not like they've been close. So next up, the Devils. The Devils went 1-1 this week. The Devils have been pretty good. They are better than I thought that they were going to be. Their defense is really good. The pads that Aaron Dell has revealed for his Devils jersey, his pads look pretty nice, not going to lie. Lastly, or well, not lastly, but in this row, the New York Islanders went 2-0 this week. Again, the Islanders looked like a monster. The Islanders are a team that I am glad I'm not playing against. The Knights are not playing against every night because the Islanders can beat anyone, no matter who you are, and they make it look easy. Not because their offense is super high flying and that they score 7 goals on you every night. It's that the Islanders have the best defense and the best system in the National Hockey League. And I don't think I'm upsetting anybody by saying that. The Islanders are terrifying for an offensive team because they can shut anyone down. You could be a team that gets 30 shots a game and they'll make it that you get 15. So, Islanders, kind of a scary team, but they had a good week. The Rangers, their rival in the same city, not so much. They were 1-1. Lafreniere hasn't really done anything yet. Kaapo Kakko's been better than he was last year, but Rangers need to get in Shesterkin's save percentage has been a little scary. So the Rangers need to really pick it up this next week. Now, one thing about these standings and about team records is that the National Hockey League is all about momentum, and a lot of these teams just haven't found their momentum yet. The Rangers were awful last season for certain portions of it, but they were also incredible in certain portions of last season. So it just depends on how you string wins together and how you don't string losses together, I guess. Philly went 1-2-1. Pretty shocked that Philly only got 3 points this week out of 4 games. Philly did not have the greatest week, but their Pennsylvania rival did have a very good week. The Penguins went 3-0 this week. They beat Boston twice, I believe. Or no, they beat Philly. I'm sorry, they beat Washington. I don't know what I'm thinking. But Pittsburgh had a very good week. Washington, on the other hand, won 0-2. They lost both games against Pittsburgh. It wasn't. I watched some of those games, and I don't think the play really favored Washington in watching them. I know that both of them went to overtime or a shootout, but I don't think the play was very close. But anyway, let's get into the standing in the East. The Washington Capitals, although they got 4 points out of 3 games, so the Washington Capitals move up to first in the division. Boston moves up to second. Philly moves down to third. The Islanders move up to fourth. Pittsburgh moves up to fifth. The Devils have moved down to sixth. The Rangers have moved down to seventh. And the Buffalo Sabres have moved down to 8th. So with that out of the way, let's get into the top 10 forwards. Now, I did these last night before NHL updated everything that happened last night. So these, at least for the defensemen and goalies, for the defensemen, it might be a little off. I updated the forwards and the goalies, but I was not going to go through all sorts of advanced stats just to find the defensemen. at least their point totals. But anyway, so at number 1, the top 10 forwards right now is kind of hard. Same with with points wise, because since so little games have been played, there's so little variation in how many people have scored points. So there's some people who are technically tied with the players in the top 10 that just aren't there because that's not where they are on NHL's list on their website. So yeah. So, anyways, Kyle Connor of the Winnipeg Jets is in first place. Bo Horvat of the Vancouver Canucks is in second place. I was a little shocked to see that considering the week that the Canucks had. Tyler Toffoli, I'm not shocked to see here after the week the Canucks had of Montreal. Mitch Marner from Toronto is in fourth. Mark Scheifele of the Jets is in fifth. Kevin Hayes of the Philadelphia Flyers is in sixth. Mark Stone of the Golden Knights is in seventh. Travis Konecny of the Philadelphia Flyers is in eighth. John Tavares of the Toronto Maple Leafs is in ninth. And Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers is in 10th. So for the D-men, I have two different criteria. Plus minus, which I know that that's not a stat that a lot of people look at, but I do think that plus minus is important for a defenseman because who plays defense? You can't really judge a defenseman based on points because that's not always their job. Defensemen need to be able to defend. So not always the best defensive defenseman has the most points. And not always the best offensive defenseman has the best defensive numbers. So anyways, let's get into it. For points, Jeff Petrie of the Montreal Canadiens is in first. Shea Theodore of the Vegas Golden Knights is in second. Quinn Hughes of the Vancouver Canucks is in third. Jacob Chychrun of the Arizona Coyotes is in fourth. And Victor Hedman of the Tampa Bay Lightning is in fifth. And plus-minus wise, Jeff Petrie is in first. Joel Edmondson of the Montreal Canadiens is in second. Shea Theodore is in third. Brendan Dillon of the Washington Capitals is in fourth. And Matt Tennyson of the New Jersey Devils is in fifth. I'm really shocked for that name to be there. Mackenzie Blackwood has been very good. Hopefully he comes back soon because I don't think Scott Wedgwood is going to carry the Devils. And then the top 3 goalies. Now, I was a little scared last night because it said Anton Högberg, who came in relief one game, was second because he didn't let in any goals, but thankfully he played last night, and that doesn't happen. So the top 3 goalies in the league: Anton Khudobin for the Dallas Stars. He only played one game, but at least he started it, and they won 7-0. Semyon Varlamov has finally broken his shutout streak. He had like 2.5 games, but he has one of the best plus-minus save percentages in the league, and right now Varlamov is the best contender for the Vezina. And then Brian Elliott of the Philadelphia Flyers is in third. So that's it for this week, guys. That's it for week 2 of This Week in Hockey. I will see you guys in the next video. But before I go, just another reminder, I have created a 2PadStack Twitter. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, it is at 2_pad, and you can get my thoughts on things around the league, active during this week, and just things that happen during Knights games. So without further ado, guys, that's it for this video. If you like the video, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. I will see you in the next video.